Good morning. A few weeks ago, Bill Sherman texted me and said, "This is your 4-week," I'm going to set this to the side, "in 1 day reminder of your lesson coming up." And he said, "If you will, give 25 minutes on what you learned in Huron and what we could learn from Huron and how we can help the next guy." And I said, "That sounds great, all except for the 25-minute part." And he did not respond, he did not laugh or anything. So, we're going 25 minutes, we're going to jump right in. I first want to start, and I'll say this again in just a minute, but I just appreciate this congregation so much. Y'all have blessed me and my family so much, not only financially in our time in Huron, but 2 times you have taken a trip up there, and the elders, Bill and Horace came up, and we just appreciated that so much. That's such a shot in the arm for us. And also, I know you guys are praying for us on this side of things too. So we loved our time in Huron. We learned so much, and I hope to pass some of that on to you guys about what we learned and what we learned that I think can help us in the big church setting. But I just want to start by saying thank you to this congregation. I really do mean that. So our lesson today, Invaluable Lessons from Small Church Ministry. Admittedly, this is not going to be as much of a Bible lesson, and I apologize for that. With the time that we have, I'll sprinkle Bible where I can, but this is not, I do want to tell you, if you're visiting Southern Ridge, there's not this little Bible in the message normally. And in my preaching, there's normally more Bible than this. I need to vindicate myself before I jump into a lesson with almost no Bible. But this is going to be just invaluable lessons from small church ministry. Whenever we were in Huron, we learned so much. One of the things that I prayed whenever everything was secured and we got the next guy to fill our spot in Huron and we were able to accept a job in Oklahoma at Tecumseh, I prayed. I almost felt guilty, and I know I shouldn't have, but I almost felt guilty, and I prayed continually that I don't want to forget the struggle that we had in Huron. I don't want to forget how difficult it was. Things are about to get, in a sense, easier, and I don't want to forget how challenging it was. And I mean, big church ministry is very difficult as well, but there's a certain struggle with small church ministry, and I don't want to forget it. So I believe there's 5 lessons here that I just want to share to you that I think we could gain now in me and you guys in big church, is what I'm going to call it. What can we learn from the small church perspective? Number 1, the Lord will provide. In Exodus chapter 22, whenever Abraham took Isaac, his only son, up to the altar, and they were walking up, and there was no lamb, there was no goat, there was no nothing with them, except Isaac was carrying the wood. Isaac said, "Dad, where's the animal for the sacrifice?" And what did Abraham say? "The Lord will provide." This is something that, the most blatant lesson that I learned in Huron that I want to remember in big church, and that I think all of us should learn, is the Lord will provide. The first way that the Lord provided for us during our time in South Dakota was financially. That was the most obvious way. And again, that's where I want to take a second and say thank you. That's due to congregations like you. We never went hungry. And we went up there with no real job, no real paycheck, right? I wasn't clocking in anywhere. And we had plenty of finances. And that was because of congregations like you, because of the generosity, because of the Lord. The Lord provided. In other ways, the Lord provided. I want to share a story about moving to Huron. And just by the way, for those that don't know, Huron is a small town in South Dakota. There's 14,000 people in South Dakota. I think there was 17 congregations in the whole state, and less than 17 of those were like active, solid congregations. I think 17 was the number on paper, but in the whole state of South Dakota, there was probably 12 to 15 that were regularly meeting with a few members there. Most of them, other than maybe 2, were sitting at about 25 members. One of them, Sioux Falls, had it was like this, 150, 200. There was one in Pierre, which is the capital, that I think had about 100. All the other congregations, there was one in Rapid City that had about 100 to 200. All the other congregations were, 15, 10, 15, 20, some 4 or 5. So it's very desolate, very different. The congregation I was at whenever we first got there, there was 9 people. And that's including the 5 of us that moved up there to work there. So I'll share those stories in a minute. But that's the situation we were in South Dakota. The Lord will provide. I want to tell you just a story about us coming to Huron. I think you cannot walk away from mission work without trusting in the providence of God. It's impossible. Without recognizing how providential God is in taking care of his people. Whenever we got the word that there was a job opening in South Dakota, first of all, the guy that I went up there with, his name is Matt. Me and Matt were joking around one day at Bear Valley, and we said, let's do mission work. Let's just go plant a church. And we were totally joking. And one of our instructors pulled us into his office the next day, and he said, I heard you guys joking about that. Are you serious? I'm like, well, we can be, I guess. And he said, I know a place. I've got this weird connection to Huron, South Dakota. So we went and visited in May, the May before we graduated. So we still had about a year of school left. But we went and visited, and the congregation had 4 people there. And one of them, her name was Inez. Inez was an elderly lady. She was in her late 70s, I believe. And she was really the matriarch. Yeah, sorry. She was kind of the matriarch of the congregation. She was born there, and she lived there forever, and she really held things together. It was her and her husband, and they had an adult daughter. And there was 2 other guys that were there. And Inez just held things together forever. She was the motherly figure of the congregation. She was in bad health, though. And whenever we went and visited in May, we committed. She actually got out of the hospital to take us around town, to tour us around town whenever we went to go visit. And then we said, okay, we're going to come to Huron whenever we graduate. And just a few short weeks later, she passed away. And later, her husband moved to Minnesota to get remarried, taking their adult daughter with them. And that left 2 members, Tom and Bill. I have full confidence that if Inez would have passed away before we committed, the church would have closed its doors. I know that it would have. I asked one of the members, I said, what would you all have done if Inez and Bob, she passed away, Bob and Bobby moved on? And he said, I would have just started going to Mitchell, which is an hour south. They would have closed their doors. I played no part in that. That was all God. I fully believe that God put us there at the right place at the right time, just before the congregation was about to close their doors. And I could tell you story after story of how much God provided, taking care of us as a congregation, providing people whenever we needed people, providing a shot in the arm when we needed a shot in the arm, giving a member or a contact who wanted a Bible study just at the right time, at the right place. It is impossible to walk away from mission work without seeing God's hand in it. I'll tell you a story on the back end. Whenever we were leaving Huron, I got a call from the church in Tecumseh in January this year. They called me, and we were like, we got to find someone to take our spot here. We'd love to work in Tecumseh, but we have to find someone to take our spot here. And got to praying, got to calling person after person after person after person, just lists of people to call to maybe fill our spot in Huron. I called one guy. I was starting to kind of get weary of finding someone. And I called one guy, and he said, Nate, it's not going to be me. I don't think I'm the right guy for it. But he said, God does not mess around with his kingdom. He will provide someone. And that stuck with me. God's not playing when it comes to his people, when it comes to his kingdom. God does not mess around, and God will provide. And sure enough, he did. And I found this job. This guy came up the way that Kevin Lovell, the way that he found support so quick, found a house so quick. It's just saying the pieces fell together is just an understatement. God provided, and it's impossible to walk away from this experience without seeing the providence of God. And now that we're here in Big Church, right, that's something I often forget already. already it's something that I forget because there's just so many more resources. We have so much. And we forget that it's God who's putting these things together and giving us so much. So never forget in Big Church that the Lord will provide, and the Lord is providing. All these things here at Southern Ridge is only because the Lord does not mess around in his kingdom, and he provides for his people. And number two, there's a big lesson Katie and I both learned in South Dakota. Check your heart. Like I said, we had 9 people to begin with. Our very first Sunday in South Dakota was 14 people. 5 of those were me, Katie, Matt, and Heather. That was the team we came with, and their daughter, Georgia. And then my mom and dad, who came to help us move, and Katie's mom and dad, who came to help us move. So I guess 13. And then the 4 members. So it was a blizzard, a bad blizzard. And that Sunday morning we woke up and there was tons of snow on the ground, freezing cold, wind blowing. And the very first Sunday, we had an immediate heart check of, why do you go to church? You don't go to church because there's a ton of people that are going to come pat you on the back and welcome you with a potluck and say, we're happy you're our new preacher. You don't come to church because the weather's nice and you go hear the birds singing when you walk in. You immediately check your heart. Why are we going to church? It was so, I grew up at Central, with 350 people. My experiences were here in Southwest, and this was the culture that I grew up in. You go to church and it's social, and you see your friends, and you go hang out and you go eat afterward. And then I went to Bear Valley, where it's 250 member congregation, 300 member congregation. And then you suddenly go to church with 14 people. 2/3 of that are your family, and you check your heart really quick. And over and over and over again with, Bible classes that size, Bible classes of 4 or 5 people, and potlucks with 5-6 people, and worship with just a few people. It's a constant heart check of, why am I here? Why am I in ministry? There was often times where I would look. I grew up with guys like Parker LaGrange at Southwest, and John, and Arvin at Southwest, and Kyle, who was here for a while, and Max, and all of these friends who were doing ministry here and talking about the lock-ins they were doing and all these things. And there was many times where I had to check my heart and think, why am I here? Now, I'm not talking down on what they're doing, because obviously they're doing a great job, and now I'm doing at Big Church what they're doing. So by no means am I talking down on that, but there were many, many times where I had to sit and think, I'm preparing a sermon for 9, 10, 11, 12 people. I got to check my heart, and I got to think about, why do I do what I do? In Big Church, that's very easy to forget. It's very easy to not check my heart. Even already 4 months removed, I have almost forgotten the, why am I here? Every Sunday in Huron, you do a heart check. I'm preparing and I'm trying to put as much effort into preaching for 9 people and hearing no attaboys, no amens as I am for 250 people. It's easy to forget to check your heart. Why do you check? Why are you in ministry? But for most of you, it's, why am I coming to church? I would encourage you to check your heart. What's the reason that I'm here? If there were 9 people here, would I still go? There were many, many Sundays that I woke up and said, I don't want to go, and I'm the paid preacher. It's very easy to forget our motivation. So, number 2, check your heart. And all of you in the pews, and myself included, let's think about, why do we do what we do? Why are we here? Are we checking off the box? Are we doing it because, socially? Why are we here? Number 3, the value of a soul. Like I said, whenever there's 9, 10 people in Bible class, and I will say this, by the time we left, there was 20, we would have 25 or so. We had some baptisms, we had some people move in, we had some members start showing back up. By the time, I keep using the number 9 or 10. Regular Sundays would be 20 to 25 whenever we left. We peaked at 30, I think one time we had 39 on a really good Sunday. But 25 was kind of steady whenever we left, and now Kevin Lovell is there and his family, and they're doing a great job in keeping keeping things going. But the value of a soul. Like I mentioned, preparing a lesson for this congregation, it's easy to put effort into preparing a lesson for this many people. But whenever putting effort into preparing a lesson for the people that are there, just a few people, it's very easy to devalue their soul and devalue the education that they need and devalue the fellowship that they need. Whenever there's just a few people showing up to your lesson, do we put the same emphasis on the value of their soul? There was other situations. Sometimes the value of the soul had to do with preparing lessons. Sometimes the value of the soul had to do with fellowship. The people that were there was not the people that Katie and I, as a young couple with young kids, would naturally click with. The two guys that held down the fort, Tom and Bill, they're really simple with names in South Dakota. Tom, Bill, Bob, Bobby. Tom and Bill, they're older men in their 60s, never been married, don't have kids. That's not the people. No knock to them. But that's, if we were in a big congregation, that's not the people that Katie and I would cross paths with and normally click with. That's not the people we would probably find ourselves going out to lunch with at a congregation like this. We would find other young people that were our age that had young kids. Those are the people that you click with. It's very easy to devalue the soul of the people that you don't click with. Whenever that's all you have, you learn quickly the value of the souls of everyone, whether they are like you or not like you. The value of a soul. There's times at big church where we, a youth activity or so maybe they're like, man, no one showed up. We've got 2 or 3 people that showed up. This happened at Tecumseh a few weeks ago. We had a fall break camp out. And there was originally 9 or 10 youth that were signed up, and then a couple got sick and it fell through. There was only going to be 3 youth that stayed, and we were like, we'll just call it off. We'll save the activity for another time. There's only going to be a few people. And I was so bummed that there was only a few people, and I found myself thinking, 3 people, that's what we did in Huron. Youth activities where we'd pick up 3 or 4 kids on the bus, and that was the core of what we had. It's very easy, again, to devalue the soul whenever we have so many, whenever we have so much. Small church ministry taught me how valuable the individual souls are, because whenever you don't have that many, that's all you got. I encourage you, myself too, that in big church, let's make sure we don't lose sight of how many souls that we have here, and not just be with the people that are like us. I'm already falling victim to it in Tecumseh. And I want to do better, and I encourage you guys, if you need to do better like I do, to value all the souls. Another one is evangelism, where we learn this lesson. We'd hear kind of big church disappointed with numbers like, we only baptized a few this year, or only 1 baptism this year. And, in Huron, if we baptized 1, it was like, this is like you are riding the high for months. Like, this is the value of that 1 soul. Whenever there's only 12, 13, 14 others, 1 soul is a huge percentage of that. So the value of the soul. It would change the way that I would, interact with people out in public. This wasn't just a person at the gas station. This was a soul that could be added to the kingdom. So think about the value of souls in big church. The perspective is skewed whenever we have so many. Contact over tact. We had a instructor at Bear Valley who would say, sometimes I'm going to butcher the way he said it, but sometimes you have so much tact that you don't make contact. That was Wayne Barrett that said that. You sometimes try and have too much tact that you never make contact. Tact, meaning I need to navigate the conversation correctly, and I don't want to offend anybody, and I need to, make sure that I plant these seeds so carefully, and you try and have too much tact in the conversation. This was one of my biggest struggles in South Dakota, and now I don't want to offend anybody. I never want to ruffle feathers. I don't want to rock the boat. And I want to be so tactful. This is something that Casey, my brother-in-law, whenever he came up to work with us in Huron, this is something that he was better at than me. He'd say, we can't get everything perfect. We just need to make contact. We just need to talk to the person. And there are so many times, I have a lot of regrets actually about how many people we made contact with in the first half of the ministry there, the first 2-3 years, that we had a good, they were consistently visiting. We were consistently eating together and doing meals, and I never had any spiritual hard conversation. I mean, we had spiritual conversations, but we never had the spiritual conversation. Because I was maybe waiting for them. I don't know. Waiting. I have a lot of regrets about never making contact, wanting to be too tactful, never being contactful, and actually getting to the heart of the matter. And maybe the reason is growing up in big church, if a visitor comes in, like someone else will take care of it. Or, there's 350 people. If that visitor never shows back up, that's okay. There's 350 other people that come to church. No biggie. Whenever there's 9 people, 10 people, at the end of it, 25 people, we never making contact. My encouragement, I think a good application of this point is jump on the visitors. Still be tactful. I'm not saying be crazy and go, knock them in the head with the Bible. But visitors come into the doors. We often wait for a visitor to come in, and they're not going to ask you, hey, I would like to be baptized. Can I have a Bible study with you? Them walking in the doors is them asking, I want to know what to do spiritually. I'm lost. Them coming in the doors is them asking. It's then on us to say, you came in today. I'm so excited. Let's have this conversation. I asked Colton Balance, who's the preacher at Central. He was doing a mission work much like this in Colorado. During the time we were. And so I texted him and I said, what would be one of the lessons that you would give if you were to do this lesson? And he said, jump on the visitors. And so that's kind of falling into this point. When visitors come in the door, that's them asking, I want to have a spiritual conversation, generally. And we need to ask them. I'd say there's nothing wrong with the first time they visit. First or second time they visit, jump on those conversations. Don't be mean, right? Still have some tact, but make sure you're making contact as well. Contact over tact. I wish that I could do the first 2.5 years over again. I wish that I could man up a little bit and have some conversations. Be willing to be uncomfortable for a few minutes and have some spiritual hard conversations with those people that I'm almost certain would have come to Christ if I would have had the guts to do it. But it's in God's hands. The last one for you is to realize what you have. There's been threads of this all through this lesson. But it's hard for me to take for granted big church again. I regret in growing up, I think I was overcritical of big church. I think I was very hypercritical of the way they did this, or that person did this, or the way this is done. I got very critical, and that's something that I need to work on. You don't, whenever you've got 15, 20, 25 people, you have no secretary, you have nobody mowing the yard, that's on you. You have all these things that you don't realize what you have until it's gone. I regret how critical I've been of big church. And so I hope that all of us, myself included, realize what we have at a place like Southern Ridge, at a place like Tecumseh, Central, Southwest. We have so much. God's church is amazing. And having 150, 200 souls in one place you can't even put into words how beautiful that is. You don't realize how beautiful it is until you don't have it anymore. I find it's more difficult for me to be critical after being in South Dakota with just a few people. My first work day, my first day in the office at Tecumseh, they do a food pantry, and the Oklahoma Food Bank comes and unloads their truck, and then we disperse it that weekend to the community in Tecumseh. And that Sunday, there was 9 or 10 or 12, a lot of the elderly members that showed up in Tecumseh. This was just a few months ago. And I was like, this is amazing. The amount of people that showed up to unload this truck on a Thursday morning at 8:30 is more people than we had in Bible class on Sunday morning a few months ago. This is amazing, and I had one of those moments of like, I can't believe I took this for granted in my upbringing. It's so much more difficult to be critical. There's another half of this too, another side of this, where in some ways it's easier to be critical of Big Church. And most of this is it's harder to be critical, but in some ways, I look at Big Church, and it's almost easier to be critical because there's some times where it's like, okay, we have 200 people, we have 250 people, and we can't find a Bible class teacher? Like, we have 250 people, and why are we still missing this? Like, there's churches in South Dakota that have 9, 10 people that are like, they're firing on all cylinders, and they're trying their best, and they're just happy to be here, and we've got all these people, and why are we struggling in this way? So there's two sides of this coin. In most ways, it's harder to be critical, and I try not to be critical. In some ways, it's easier to be critical because we have so much and still take it for granted. My encouragement to you is don't take for granted what we have here at a place like Southern Ridge. I'm trying to figure it out at a place like Tecumseh. We have so much. It's at potlucks. I try and just sit back. We do a potluck every Sunday at Tecumseh. Something I would take for granted growing up. After Huron, sitting back and seeing 200 people in the fellowship hall after Sunday eating and laughing and fellowshipping together. I try and soak those moments in. Those moments are sweeter because now I have a different perspective, and I encourage you guys to do the same. Think about what we have. Those are 5 lessons from small church ministry. I know there's very little Bible in this, and I apologize for that. I hope that this is encouraging to you. I hope it gives you something to chew on. Those 5.5, 6 years in Huron certainly gave me something to chew on. I don't have it perfect by any means. I'm still working on applying these lessons in my own life, and I hope that you'll do the same. More than anything, what Huron did for Katie and I and our family is it just really stripped us down of everything. And you're there, and it's negative 20 degrees, and there's a few people at church, and you take inventory of what are the things that are most important to us. There's not all these places to eat. There's not all this stuff going on around us. We've got our family, we've got our salvation, and we've got the church. And that's what matters. Maybe you're in a place this morning where you're stripped down of all these things, or you need to strip down of all the things surrounding you and take inventory of what do you have. And if you don't have salvation and you don't have the church, change that. You can change that. Christ has opened the door for you to change that, and I encourage you to do that this morning. If you have any needs, please come now as we stand and sing.